Hey everyone, I decided to take the day off today and come down to Rhode Island to do a little paddling. I'm on Big River. I put in at Zeke's Bridge in Coventry and I'm paddling south, which is actually upstream, to this little pond that sits off the river. You need to portage the kayak over in order to get on the pond, and there are no roads where you can take cars to it. There are only some hiking trails. It sees very little activity. I never see anyone else there. I used to spend a lot of time there when I was younger. Would go camping out there with my buddy, illegally, but we would always clean the place up where people would party and leave it better than we found it. I used to take my daughter paddling out there. This past summer, went out there with a buddy, had a great day of it. This is my first solo trip out there in a while, and I'm really looking forward to it. I have a perfect fall day. There's no wind, warm temperatures, a lot of color along the river, and I brought my hammock, some food, some drinks. It's going to be a good time. A lot of great wildlife out there. Might catch some birds in migration. So let's see what we can find. Here we go, portaging over to the pond. Brought this simple little wheel cart to make things a little bit easier, and we're gonna head that way. So this is where we used to camp. It's been a long time. A lot of good memories. I remember hearing barred owls going at it at night. And one morning, I was outside of my tent early, and my friend John was still in his tent, and this fawn came walking through camp. And I'm like, John, wake up, there's a deer. And he managed to peek his head out and see it. And the fawn ended up running off because something else scared it. It didn't seem bothered by us, but that was a lot of fun. And I remember telling my daughter about that story when we were paddling on the pond. And not long after I told her that story, we saw some deer walking by on the bank. But this is the view from the campsite area. Pretty cool spot. Perhaps this was an old hunting camp at one time, I don't really know. We are here. How beautiful is this place? It has a fairly deep hole in the middle of the pond and some really interesting habitat around the edge, including quaking bogs, pitcher plants, and all kinds of interesting plant life. So I decided to bring my hip boots and rain pant to stay dry and to navigate through some mucky waters at the shore. But it's pretty warm out. I also brought some shorts and water shoes, so I made change to that. But these are really handy for things like this, especially as it gets a little colder in the fall. And let's get on the water. So since I've been floating around the pond here, been hearing a few birds. Nothing too much yet. I'm hoping a flock of fall migrants will come around the edge of the pond at some point. But I have heard pine warbler and black-throated green warbler actually singing, which is kind of cool. You don't hear them singing a lot in the fall. And there was a red-shouldered hawk screaming in the distance. I get them every time I'm here. They nest in this area. But I may take the binoculars, and if I set up the hammock on shore later, I may go for a little walk and see what I can find. So this pond isn't a killer pond for fish. It's decent. To me, it's really not about that, and it's just a nice bonus that you can catch some fish while you're here. I always get some fish here. Some days I've had good days, but it's really about the location. And you know, if I have no luck with bass after a while, I may switch and try a small spinner or some jigs for yellow perch. There's also a lot of, well, not a lot, there's also chain pickerel in here. And one of the biggest ones I ever caught was in this pond, and actually kind of a funny story. My daughter was with me, and she was so excited when I caught it. And she's like, Dad, are you gonna, oh, come on, grab it. Grab it. She was so excited. It was a monster. It was probably, I don't know, it was at least 3 or 4 pounds. It was huge, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she's like, Dad, you should stuff it. No, I'm gonna let it go. And of course, pickerel create a lot of slime, and trying to get it unhooked in the canoe, and there's all kinds of water sloshing around in the canoe with the pickerel slime, smelly. When we go to take the canoe out of the water and put it on the car, my daughter Heather grabs one end and I grab the other, and I lift it up higher, and all the pickerel smelly water dripped all over her. And we still laugh about it to this day. She didn't find it very funny at the time, though. And we got a fish. Looks like a little largemouth. I'll take it. Yeah. Relax there, buddy. Nothing to brag about, but hey, we're on the board with our first bass. Go get bigger. I love that beautiful boggy cove in the background there. Some standing deadwood in there, some maples starting to show some color. And right behind the lily pads that are right in front of me, where there's some juniper and some other shrubs, that's where there are a lot of pitcher plants growing. It's the carnivorous plant that I mentioned earlier. Super cool plant, and maybe I'll take a paddle over there and still see if we can find any remnants of them flowering. Here we go. This is the base of a pitcher plant, and this time of year it doesn't have the stalk that grows over it with the flower, but these specialized leaves form these basically pitfall traps, and the insects get inside there and they can't get out. There's liquid in there that digests the insects and they absorb the nutrients. Pretty fascinating plant. Definitely the best place I've had lunch in a while. After this, I'm going to go on shore, go for a little walk, see what I can find. There's a trail that goes around part of the pond, pretty close to the edge, and this section here is very flooded. The water's super high today. This is a section of the pond that you can't really paddle into. It's very boggy. In fact, this little dark mass over here in the center is probably one of those quaking bogs, and in the background is the main body of water where I was paddling. I've been in here in the fall and have seen blue-winged teal and green-winged teal in here. And many years ago, I used to get ruffed grouse around the edge of this pond, but they've pretty much disappeared from Rhode Island, unfortunately. Some beautiful winterberry growing here at the edge. It's in the genus Ilex, which is the same as the holly trees that you see. Great native shrub, good wildlife value. One of my favorite native shrubs is this sweet pepper bush. Some people just simply call it clethra, which is the Latin genus. Clethna alnifolia is the Latin name. And it's a pretty cool plant. Some people call it soap bush because these are the seed pods now, but when they flower, you can strip the flower heads off and you put your hands in the water and rub them together, and it suds up nicely with a great fragrance. A super wildlife plant. Here's a nice patch of princess pine, which isn't a pine at all. It's a type of club moss in the Lycopodium genus, but it's a really beautiful little plant. And what's interesting about it, this whole section here is probably all one plant. The roots spread out underground and they throw up different parts of the plant above ground, and because of that, it forms a nice natural ground cover, like a web over the soil to help control soil erosion. Some really cool mushrooms here. I don't know much about them, but they're beautiful. I think I'll call these ones cartoon mushrooms. Kind of crazy. There's more back there. At various points along the shoreline are those quaking bogs that I mentioned. They're really nothing more than floating mats of vegetation, and they're mostly made out of sphagnum moss. The mat can get so thick you can actually walk on it with water underneath it. It's almost like walking on a waterbed. I definitely would not recommend it though, because if you fall through, you can be in serious trouble. Back there's one that comes right up to the edge of the deeper water so you can see underneath it. It's pretty neat. They're more common up north. In Rhode Island, I'm only aware of one other spot at L Pond in Hopkinton. There may be more, but I'm not aware of any others. Well, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Hate to leave, but I have other things to do.